arrived. We've arrived. How are you kids doing today? Lovely, I hope. I am your wonderful, faithful, loyal host. I go by the name of LAREN Moore.
I am some of those things, but not really. Co-host Vince Eustace.
And we want to welcome you guys to the very first episode, yay, of Popcorn
and Booze.
Yay! Round of applause. We got to get a round of applause machine once we get the show really going, right, Vince? I think that'll be a good
Yeah.
All right, kids. Basically, it's a show that revolves predominantly around pop culture. It just so happens me and my co-host Vince here are huge wrestling marks. And for those who don't know what a mark is, Google it. I'm not going to sit here and explain it to you. But in a nutshell, it's a really hardcore wrestling fan. We're going to cover wrestling, of course, past, present, and future. We're also huge hip-hop heads and music heads, period. But if somebody came knocking on the door and was like, hey, what do you want, this Wu-Tang or this Britney Spears? I'm going to pick the Wu-Tang. I don't know about you guys. Yeah, because they ain't nothing to fuck with. So we're also hip-hop heads. So we're going to be covering some hip-hop news and hip-hop retro stuff as well, and just talking hip-hop, period. With that being said, let's get into our first topic, shall we? Vince, lead us in, my friend.
Sure. Before we get to the pop culture movie aspects, we're also movie buffs. I think we'd be remiss to not mention the sort of racial, political, socioeconomic climate that's happening nowadays.
Facts.
So we're filming, I forget the date, but it's June 23rd. I just saw it on the computer, June 23rd. So in terms of time capsule, we're in the midst of Black Lives Matter in terms of
protesting.
Protesting, trying to possibly defund the police, which doesn't mean get rid of the police. It just means reallocate a lot of the budget to some other things that could be useful in the community. So let's just talk on that real quick, just to sort of get a landscape. LAREN. Oh, I say it right as you're taking a swig of water.
Right. Way to go. Perfect timing, Vince. You're supposed to be doing everything white as a white person right now. Jeez, come on. No, right. So harping on that a little bit. I mean, obviously, being an African-American man, this is an incredibly sensitive and very important topic to me from different aspects. I mean, obviously, the number one is I am a man of color, and I don't have to sit here and go into a long rant about how not only unacceptable the climate is and has been for 400 plus years and counting. It's abhorrent. And first of all, I we're a little bit off as far as weeks go, but rest in peace to George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. It's funny. I'm about to list off the current names, and me and you, Vince, have actually spoke about this, Vince. I could keep going and going. There's way more names, and it's too many, sadly. I mean, Trayvon Martin. I can go back. We can go back 10 years. And within the past 10 years, there's just been mass killings of young African-American people, young and old. So to sit here and just talk about the more current ones is obviously horrible, but I would be remiss to not even mention the hundreds and hundreds of other names, the Tamir Rices, the Freddie Grays, the Philando Castiles. It's sad, and it scares me as a black man that one day I could possibly be one of those names. I mean, I just not recently. It's been a few months. I got pulled over by the police, and as simple as it was just a traffic stop. As simple as it was, as a man of color, you can't help but to think, shit, is this it? Not so much am I going to get killed today, but is this the day where I get into such a heated, escalated issue with an officer of law that it could possibly lead to my death, or my unjustly imprisonment, or me getting the hell beat out of me. I mean, it's scary. It's scary. And I always tell my people of non-color, specifically white people, the number one thing is empathy. It's empathy. That's the word. And as one of the greatest, not only greatest wrestlers of all time and greatest mouthpieces on the microphone, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, has said recently, where's our leaders? Where's our leadership? And obviously we have, in my personal opinion, and I'm sure Vince agrees, we have a terrible leader right now. I wouldn't even call him that. That's a loose leader. Calling somebody a leader means you appreciate their leadership. So I can't even call him that because I don't appreciate him at all. But we don't have any leadership. And I always tell people, my fellow Caucasians, my fellow white people, you have to be the ones to take the leadership, because the white supremacists and the white internet, I call them internationalists, because to me, racism is all over the world. There aren't just white people in America. They're, still in Europe, different parts of the world. There's racism everywhere. Sadly, even from some other minorities towards African Americans, which has always been above me, but that's a whole nother story. You have to take leadership within yourself. And I'm speaking to those who claim to be liberal, who claim to be progressive, who claim to be non-racist, who claim to practice equality. You have to be the ones to be the leaders, because the people that are making you guys look bad aren't going to do it. So you have to overrule them and stand up as those type of white people and say, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Stop it. And that's where I think the leadership comes from. It's white people checking other white people. And until that happens, this is never going to stop. Until people who are white, and I know it sounds like I'm picking on white people. I'm not. This is where the problem is, unfortunately. That's where a majority, if not all, racism and discrimination and inequality started. It started with white European America, a white European crossed over into America society. So it starts with that. And I do agree with the quick side point. I do agree with the notion that black people need to do better. But I'm going to quote what Aries Spears, who's not a favorite comic of mine, but I follow him, and he could be a little off kilter sometimes, but he made a really good point. What black people need to fix is what black people need to fix within our community. We don't need to be doing anything to fix anything to make white people like us better.
Right.
That's not up to us. We didn't cause this. What black people need to do is just fix what's in our community, the ignorance, the gang violence. That has nothing to do with racism or capitalism or supremacy. It has nothing to do with that. So when that is counteracted with, well, why are the police taking black lives? Why are white citizens? I mean, it's the Ahmaud Arbery situation. He was killed by citizens. They shot him like it was the 1960s, chasing this boy in a pickup truck. That's a horrible visual. And so it isn't just the police, it's citizens. It's people of non-color killing people of color that aren't even law enforcement. So it's a huge problem, is my point. And it's up to the white people, I think, who are progressive, to stand up against that, along with black people and along with minorities, and say this is unacceptable. And that's where the leadership lies. And it's a sensitive subject, and until people start making a stand and speaking up and really policing the police, and that's another thing too. The police need to start policing the police. They're so quick to throw this whole Blue Lives Matter crap out. That's a bunch of crap. At the end of the day, that cop gets to take that uniform off. I can't take this black skin off. It's not going anywhere. I don't want it to go anywhere, but I definitely can't take it off. So it's the police that have to fix their problems as well. They need to be trained better. And police, much like white people, need to be checking other white people. The police need to be checking other police officers.
Right. The good cops need to be checking the bad cops.
Exactly. None of this good cop, bad cop stuff, interrogation room style. I mean, actual good cops taking down bad cops and saying, what you're doing is really making us all look bad. So that's where a lot of the problems lie. And that's really all I have to say about that. And rest in peace to all the casualties of this horrible ideology of black people are just scary. We're horrible. It's so stale. It should have never been a thing, period, even hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But the fact that in 2020, me and you, a white man and a black man, have to even be having this conversation is beyond me. Yeah. So let's do better. Vince, sure. I'm sure you have an opinion on the matter as well.
I do. I mean, it mirrors yours. For the most part, though, I feel like it's not how do I word this? I'm probably gonna say this wrong. I feel like it's also not it's probably more on me, like, to listen at this point, especially like when a black man or a black person's talking about it, and then my responsibility is to at least try to get other white people to sort of see it and not make it a debate, not make it a like, oh, like I schooled you, I owned you in this debate, and like facial or trying to make them feel bad.
That would be kind of funny.
Yeah, not trying to make them feel bad and shame them and be like, oh, you're a racist. It's like because I don't want to win debate points. I want them to sort of see what's going on.
You want to educate.
I see a lot of times it's like huge misconceptions. Like the biggest misconception is white privilege, where they think that like white privilege means, oh, just because I'm white, like I'm rich automatically from birth. You know, I live in a mansion,
it's deeper than
I have
that,
a silver spoon, and you have golden place, and blah blah blah. It's like, no, that's not what it is. It just means that you being white has never held you back from a job, from getting a house. For the most part, I mean, I'm sure there's some white kids who went to all black schools, but I know, for example, I went to like predominantly white school, and there was a couple of people of color students there. And I saw a quick little thing on Facebook today where some white kid was arguing with a girl who went there at the same time who was black. She tried to check him for his privilege. It's like, I'm not privileged. How am I white privileged? It's like, you went to the same high school as us. Like all the white kids were white privileged kids there. Like that's we're not debating that. So I think, I just have to try to listen to what the voices in the black community are saying, and then try to be a mouthpiece to the white people who are good intentioned but don't quite get it yet.
Yep. And I agree. And that's where the problem can be fixed. Is when you're making efforts as a person or persons of non-color, I say, or just white people or people that are non-African American, predominantly, obviously, white people. It's the best thing to do about it is to educate, listen, and then take what you've heard, which within reason, because I'm not going to sit there and say every black person is right. You know what I'm saying? But from a struggle standpoint, yes, listen and then pass it on. You know, and tell other white people, listen, this is how they're feeling, and they have every right to feel that way. So. Right. That's that, man. So with that being said, let's get into the bulk of the show.
We'll have a lot more to talk about that. That's clearly a topic that sadly isn't going away anytime soon. That has been dominating the news a lot lately. It's kind of pushed to the side another big news story, which is that we're currently in a pandemic. COVID-19, coronavirus, hasn't gone away. We forgot about it. Or the reason why we're not doing the show together, like in one place, we're doing it from separate places, is because I guess restrictions are being
Where's your mask? Where's your mask, Vince? I can feel your breath through the phone. Okay. I know we're social distancing right now, but
we are social distancing.
Hey, I don't think you're being very safe right now, pal. Put that mask on.
So, but also, so it's been COVID-19 and racial tensions.
Yes.
Someone who's kind of in the little inner circle of that Venn diagram is comedian DL Hughley. He's someone who speaks out a lot on sort of Black Lives Matter, but also just, like this sort of oppression that the black people have had.
Yeah, he's a bit of an activist. He's an
activist.
I would consider him at this point much like Killer Mike. He really advocates, and when you really advocate, to me, you're a modern day, maybe not to that level, but you're trying to be a modern day Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, But
sadly, because I said he's in the middle of the Venn diagram, that means he's somewhat related to COVID-19.
Yeah.
And we just found out that recently he was diagnosed with COVID-19. He was doing, I believe, a set.
Passed out.
Stand up, and he passed out, and then he got tested. Turned out he has the Rona.
The Rona, yeah, he does. I grew up much like a lot of, like, obviously, Vince, and our viewers, some of our viewers who know me. I'm a stand-up comedian myself. I'm not a huge DL Hughley fan, but I do see him as one of the proprietors and one of the pioneers of this comedic game, I guess, quote unquote. he's going to be amongst the greats one day, and he's already kind of there. He at one point, and it's still to this day, he was part of a tour called the Kings of Comedy.
That's right.
I don't know if you remember that with rest in peace, another King of Comedy, Bernie Mac, who I miss so much. Cedric the Entertainer and Steve Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great tour, and they made a concert film based off that. But I grew up on DL Hughley, and listen, man, this pandemic, it ain't no joke, and if we're gonna harp on the precautions and safety practices you should take, it's just about awareness at this point. Because here's the thing, I understand everybody's going stir crazy. They're opening things up, and since things have been opening up from a very safe social distancing practice, I've even indulged on a couple places that they've opened up. Again, being safe, mask, gloves, social distancing, not sitting by too many people, only engaging with people I'm very, very familiar with. But it's about awareness, and it's okay to do those things. You just have to be, very aware. And DL Hughley is probably the type of person that, a lot of these celebrities, I believe, have gotten coronavirus due to the fact that they're famous and they do nothing but travel all the time.
Yeah.
DL Hughley when he passed out, he was probably on some type of tour, or doing something, where he engaged with crowds. So you kind of hear it and you're like, oh, yeah, you hear about Tom Hanks when he caught corona.
Dave was one of the first ones.
He's one of the first ones to come out publicly. Rest in peace, Fred the Godson, the hip hop.
Yeah.
He died from coronavirus. I mean, he wasn't popping before he died, but he still had a very core fan base. So he probably was doing. These people are traveling. Mm-hmm. So when you hear about it, you're just like, damn, it's probably the scariest to be a celebrity right now. Because they still want you to work. You could social distance all you want, but that's your bread and butter, being social. So I wish Dale Hughley the best. I saw a post he did on Instagram. He sounds healthy. He seems healthy enough. And I hope he shakes this thing. I know Babyface had it, and he got rid of it. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Babyface had it.
No, I did not know that.
Babyface had corona, and he had the Rona, and it apparently it went away. He's a Rona survivor. There's a lot of Rona survivors. They don't talk about that too much. They always want to harp on the deaths and the actual cases, but there have been hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people that have actually caught COVID and shook it.
Yeah.
And Babyface is one of them. And I hope DL Hughley is. I need to read more on the story, but
said he was in Nashville doing a gig. Yeah. In the video, I was surprised how quickly the one dude to the side caught him as he was falling.
I was gonna say, did they show him actually passing out?
Yeah, you see him kind of stumble back, and then some guy kind of swooped in on stage. I guess saw it. Maybe he was kind of showing signs of it early, because he just jumped right there and caught him before he could really hit the ground. They say he's going to be
kudos to that gentleman. wherever you are, I owe you a Twinkie or a foot massage.
So
and not in that order.
Maybe just the Twinkie. But they're saying that the DL Hughley is going to be quarantining in his Nashville hotel for the next 14 days. So I think he was probably going around places, and
he'll probably within that time he'll probably medicate himself with I'm sure he's been given some type of medication or antibiotics. I don't really know the procedure of how to get rid of it or to maintain it not being fatal really when you do catch it, but I'm sure he's getting the best help. I hope he is.
And they were saying that he was showing no signs of it. He was actually being treated for extreme exhaustion and dehydration because he was dehydrated. So they're just testing for that, and then they throw in the COVID tests, and then they're like, "Oh, you have COVID-19." So he was blindsided by this. He had no clue that this is what this was. Yeah. So it's just another thing that's even if you don't have the symptoms, you could still have it. So that's something I have to think about. Before, I don't go out too often, but when I think about it, it's I feel fine, I feel safe, but you never know.
No, you don't. Listen, get well, DL. You're one of the greats, man, and I think you'll pull through this. You'll be just fine. He's a talented man, and I wish him and his family the best. I really do. Yeah. With that being said, What's our next topic? What are we moving on to, my
well,
good friend
also
Vince?
tied to the pandemic and the coronavirus, everything's been shut down. We're now starting to get restaurants, salons, some bars. Obviously, restrictions are in order. You have to make sure that
safety practices,
masks,
social distancing,
yeah. So, but one of the big things is, when are movie theaters going to open up? Because movie theaters have taken a big hit. They've had to close down. They're losing a ton of money. They're even saying that like movie theaters might be extinct after this. They're like that, like they might not, the way everything's streaming now, the way we get used to this. So the movie, like AMC, obviously, and theaters like then, the big change are like, no, we need to get things rolling.
We need to make this money.
We need to start showing Tenet. We need to start showing all these big movies. We need to start recouping our losses. So AMC, after you and I had talked about this, there was a big back and forth, like movie release dates were getting pushed back and back and back. They finally agreed, all right, we're going to start opening the movie theaters. I think Tenet's going to be coming out very soon. Another movie,
which is supposed to be a huge Christopher Nolan film. So
that's going to be a huge.
They definitely want an audience for that type of film. So
yeah,
I see why,
But so we'll talk about how Tenet is coming out. If we're looking forward to that, looking forward to one of the movies. But also we need to discuss how AMC originally, when they announced the big rollback out, they said that they weren't going to make people wear masks. And there was giant backlash on that.
And instantly regretted saying.
So then they quickly backtrack and were like, all right, you got to wear masks.
Oh, shit.
You're coming here, you got to wear masks. I'm sure there's some people who are like, oh, this is against the Constitution. I don't have to wear a mask. But I mean, for the most part, everyone seems to sort of agree. So I don't know if you want to start with Tenet or just the movies opening, if you want to go to the movies, or AMC backtracking, but what's your take on all of this going on?
Listen, again, it's much like with the whole restaurant openings and bar openings. I get it. People are stir crazy. They want to get out there. They want to go back to at least some remnants of a normal life. I get it. Unfortunately, there's nothing normal about anything that's going on right now with this pandemic. And again, I'm all for the somewhat openings of certain things as long as they take extreme. And I know that that's not entirely ideal, but if they could just take extreme safety practices and precautions in doing so. Listen, if they could somehow do it and alter these theaters, which they're going to have to literally reconstruct these auditoriums for social distancing and for the safe practices, the precautions of trying to avoid as much contact with moviegoers, which is, I mean, limited to what? Spreading the seats apart, maybe making the theaters bigger, maybe. That's what.
Maybe they can unscrew, like do half capacity. I've heard they're going to do like, they will sell half the tickets just to get people in there, and then maybe they'll like just like put trash bags, or maybe they'll like unscrew the seats, so like maybe you can do like two. And so obviously if you're like a couple, if you're in a group or something, you can sit in these things. I don't know, it should be interesting.
I mean, it'd be great if they even did like every section has a bubble plastic just this fucking thing just surrounding them, like in Bubble Boy, and they just sit in that and stew and sweat, which is funny. So I'm part of as you know, I'm part of a sketch comedy show called TMI Hollywood. Shout out to TMI. Miss you guys. One of the last episodes we did, the day they did the lockdown, March 15th, I was in a sketch where I played a man who's in a relationship with a woman, and we have trapped ourselves within a bubble. We were the bubble couple. So that's what they need to do. Do like what we did in that sketch. Walk around with plastic around you nonstop in the theater. Anything short of that, I don't know. And good luck to AMC. I really do want to go see a movie, but if you want my personal opinion, and this might sound horribly dated, and people might be like, really? I have not been to the theaters since Us came out. Jordan Peele's Us.
Okay.
So, and we're talking about, at this point, a year and a half ago. So I wasn't clamoring to go to the theaters pre-COVID. So,
wait, did you see Endgame in theaters?
No, sure did. That was I think that was, Infinity War. Infinity War and Endgame were the only two I did not see. I've seen every other Marvel film. For some reason, I did not get around to those two. It's just, that's life sometimes. I was going through life issues. Let's just say that. But, so my point is, like, even pre-COVID, it's not like I was clamoring to go to the movie theater anyway. So it's like, my lackluster attitude about going to movies, and now there's COVID, yeah, I'm gonna probably sit that out for a little while. I'm gonna sit that one out for a couple more months. We'll see. Listen, they're streaming everything now. For big theatrical releases they want to release that they can't, they're sending them straight to streaming apps and streaming sites, or on demand pay-per-view. So maybe that's just the safest way to go. I don't know.
Maybe.
Who knows?
It's interesting. I really miss going to. We didn't go a ton, but like every now and then, like if my wife had, got off work early and I wasn't working that night, we would be like, oh, let's go to the movie. This is out. Let's do dinner.
And I love going to the movies. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I do. It's just I just wasn't a priority for me.
And so like, and I do miss going out, and I really miss going to the movies. But like we talked about before, like I'm really just
gotta be precautious.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really cautious about going, especially in big crowds, and they have a lot of lists circulating about like, oh, here are the activities where you're at low risk, here's where you're a little higher, here's where you're higher. And going to bars, which I love doing, going to the movies are kind of like on the higher end. Like that's a very high risk. So it's like, and especially right now, like as we're doing this episode, cases are spiking across the country because of the reopenings all over the place. So it's
all bad.
Like we'll see where we kind of are as a country, or at least state of California when the movies open. But like I want to, but I can't see myself rushing out there just yet, even as good as Tenet looks.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely want to check that movie out, man. I'm a Christopher Nolan fan. I loved his take on Batman. I love Inception. It's one of my favorite movies. So yeah, get those audience out there. Go see Tenet, but be safe, people.
Yeah, we're not going to see it. So you
Tenet
guys see it.
Go see it, and then we'll review it. Tell us about it, and then here on the show on Popcorn and Booze, we will do a review on it. How about that? That's the best.
Maybe we'll bring you on as a guest. We'll bring you on as a guest.
You know what? Damn it, Vince. And what he said. What he said down, that's what he said.
I mean, we'll have to zoom you in. None of us want to be in the same room with you because obviously COVID, we have to be very safe, but we'll zoom you in.
Listen, tell us about it from as far away as possible. Yes. That's the rule here on Popcorn and Booze. So. All right. All right, my friend. So why don't we move on to our next topic? What do we got? Our first official segment, I believe, right?
All right. So this is the hip hop segment.
Hip hop. It all started in the park. Hip hop. It all started in the park. Shout out to the DJ Kool Herc and Kool Herc and DJ Hollywood, the proprietors, the fathers of hip hop. They started this in 1973 in the Bronx on Sedgwick. Shout out to them, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am 40, 50 years later. So there you go.
For a second, I thought you were doing the theme song to White Rapper Show. We're like, hip hop up in the Bronx. We're Funky Funk Fresh Bro All Stars. And I was like, interesting. And I was like, oh, the theme was a play off another. I get it. But that's actually a decent segue, because our first segment is about the host and co-creator of one of my favorite shows of the 2000s, the White Rapper Show, and one of the co-founders of the seminal hip hop group Third Base.
The fact that it was called that, oh man.
MC Search.
Kanye West had a really great line in a song. It wasn't even a great song. It was a feature he did on one of The Dream. You know The Dream, the singer?
Yeah. The songwriter.
The songwriter, singer. He has a song. I think it's You Got Me Walking on the Moon. I think it's that song. But anyway, Kanye has a really creative line in that, and it's a whole Third Base MC Search reference. And I think the line goes as follows. He says, he's talking about a girl. So he says, "Hey girl, let the MC search till I reach third base." And I was like, oh, Kanye. Nice little double entendre play on there. I like that. Nice little punchline, my friend.
Kanye's got his moments.
Let the MC search until I reach third base. Got to think about that. Double meaning there. That's what hip hop's all about.
So the aforementioned MC Search is in the news. Headline on Hip Hop DX and other publications where that he's aspiring to be hip hop's Howard Stern, which is interesting because a lot of people
Please elaborate on that, Vince.
Well, a lot of people have already considered Joe Budden to sort of already be hip hop's Howard
Lord
Stern.
Jamar. Lord
Yeah,
Jamar.
but that's neither here nor there. So apparently he has newly launched a podcast, the Search Says podcast, and his aspirations are he wants to be hip hop's Howard Stern. He says, "I've
Yeah.
always wanted to be hip hop's Howard Stern. Forget about like the old Howard Stern. I'm not trying to be shock jock, but what I love about Howard is how much respect he does, how much research he does in his interviews.
He
So
does.
he basically just like wants to be such a great interviewer, very in depth. He said that's always my thing. When he was at another show, his program director used to say, "Hey, you're the hip hop Howard Stern," because of his conversations with his guests. Which I think that's what inspired him to try and do his short-lived sort of Maury Povich type talk show. Because I think he was like, "Oh, I can connect to people and talk to people."
Right.
But
Yeah.
I haven't heard his podcast yet. But apparently he is gunning to be the hip hop version of Howard Stern. And so I don't know your thoughts on MC Search. I don't know your thoughts on Howard Stern. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I mean, listen, he, other than, aside from being in one of the, I guess at this point, especially if you're a hip hop head, aside from being a part of one of the, probably the greatest hip hop groups of all time, he's an historian.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on that level of that standpoint, and you're that knowledgeable about something that not only do you yourself practice, which he did, and still to this day in his 50s lives, why not want to be the best at it as far as journalism? I guess, you could even equate that to him saying that he could very well be the Howard Stern of hip hop, and he could maybe the Larry King.
That's a good one.
That's another good reference. Larry King is the best at journalism and in that field, just like Howard Stern is. And if he can really pull that out, that type of first of all, he's going to need that type of following.
Yeah.
Because we know Howard Stern at this point has got to have had at least a 40-year career. I mean, I would think it's funny. It reminds me of that movie Private Parts, which is kind of based on his life. I don't know if you remember that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Howard Stern started in the late 70s, early 80s, and he kind of transpired from there, and then he got right around the 90s is when he blew up the biggest. So, if that at this point, that would probably be the length of time MC Search has been a hip hop historian. I don't know. So he just needs that following, is the difference. And because Howard Stern's been doing this so long, he's top tier. He is top tier. Howard Stern he's gonna obviously go down in history as one of the greatest journalistic figures in the world. And so those are some big shoes to follow, I guess, or to fill, I should say. But is it impossible? No. And I appreciate his aspirations to do so.
Right.
As long as he doesn't do some of the things Howard Stern used to do on the show, like bring a woman on who would swallow a 15-inch deep throat, a 15-inch kielbasa. I don't know if you remember the kielbasa lady. That was disturbing. Or a little funny-looking black dude named Beetlejuice. He's a horrifying little thing. Is
the
what
Whack Pack.
All those weird guests and regulars he had on the show. I don't think. Yes, Search. I don't think you need to do all. You don't need to do all that.
I mean,
that's not very hip hop.
It sounds like he's trying to do mostly like the latter day Howard Stern, the research. Just really focus on interviews. You can make an argument. We made Joe Budden as someone who kind of does that already. Charlemagne the God is someone who kind of does the shock jock, but from time to time will also try to do some real interviews. We've talked about DJ Vlad, who I don't necessarily think is the greatest, but there's no denying that
you have your reservations about Lord Jamar. We've talked about him.
But Jamar's fine. It's Vlad that's kind of,
and Vlad too, yeah.
Yeah, but Vlad, I think one of the biggest complaints about Vlad is that he's always trying to trip up people and get them in trouble, and
or he's just profiting, or he's very judgmental or condescending about his journalism. Yeah.
He gets the label of being a culture vulture, and even though MC Search is white, I don't think he would get that on him as much because he was not around like in the 70s so much, but like when the 80s were blowing up hip hop, and not quite like mainstream, but like underground, especially in New York. He was very much a big part of that scene, and he's like, you can't really deny that MC MC Search isn't hip hop.
MC, please, Hammer, don't hurt him.
Yeah.
Oh man, well, listen, more power to that brother, man. And with that being said, why don't we go into the next portion? This is a good segue into our next portion now.
Yeah, so we were gonna talk about MC Search and third base. We talked about how he had been around for a while, but he's not a culture vulture. A lot of times when a white MC tries to make their mark or splash in hip hop, they're automatically sort of looked at, they're sort of screened to be like, all right, is this guy a culture vulture, or is this girl a culture vulture? In Iggy Azalea's case. But he especially, I mean, Pete Nice was there from the beginning, but he definitely, I feel, kind of solidified his credentials early.
Kick him in the grill, Pete. Yeah, absolutely, man. And with that being said, why don't we? So I've pulled up third base here on the Wikipedia machine because there are some people out there that aren't familiar with third base. Me and Vince grew up on third base. I remember third base personally. I remember third base for being obviously white rappers. That was the first thing I noticed. Their DJ is actually black. DJ Richie Rich. So it technically made them the first successful interracial group, actually, because they had a black DJ. But they're more known, obviously, because they were the rappers. He only DJ'd. They were probably the first big successful act after the Beastie Boys, as far as Caucasian rappers. And much like Eminem, they came in and they embodied it. They didn't come in with this culture vulture type attitude. They knew who came before them and emulated that, but not in a culture vulture fashion. They emulated in, I'm humbled and thank you guys for letting us into this. And I'm obviously speaking of the black rappers that came before them that paved the way. But for those who don't know, give you a little knowledge about third base. So third base was an American hip hop group that rose to fame in the late 1980s and early 1990s. I almost said the early 1900s. And my boy, would that have been problematic?
They started before even
the hip hop wasn't even around.
Yeah.
And it says here they're notable for being one of the first successful interracial hip hop groups. They dissolved in 1992, which I kind of remember because at that point MC Search went solo, and he actually did a fairly successful solo album. I don't remember what happened to P Nice. I think he might have tried some solo work too. I don't think he did as good as MC Search. But it says they dissolved in 1992, got back together some years later, and then dissolved in 2000, and then came back together, and then in 2013 dissolved again and these were all reunions. The group released 2 studio albums in their initial career, and both of them were certified gold. A lot of people don't know this, but it was actually MC Search that discovered Nas. A lot of people don't realize that. Nas's first big break was on an MC Search single, which was on MC Search's solo album. And he featured this chip-toothed young kid from my hometown, Queensbridge, and Nas went on there and murdered it, by the way. He had the best verse, of course. Yeah. And I think MC Search was like, shit. I'm so glad I discovered this kid, but he just murdered me on my own shit.
Yeah.
But MC Search he actually shopped Nas around and got Nas his first deal because he was technically managing him. And he wanted to sign Nas to his label because when he went solo, he started his own label. I can't remember what it was called. I'll look it up. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. He shopped Nas around, and Nas obviously turned out to be the legend that he is today. But
real quick to interject, I just wanted to point out during the infamous Jay-Z Nas beef, especially the Jay-Z diss track Takeover, when he was dissing Nas, he even kind of mentioned Search when he's like, you made it a hot line, I made it a hot song, and I know who I paid, Searchlight Publishing, and you didn't get a dime. So he was like calling him out, being like, oh yeah, so like I used your voice, you didn't get paid from it because Search allegedly screwed him over on his publishing deal and stuff. So Search got paid off that, according to Jay.
Which Search denies. He's denied in interviews that he's denied that he wasn't out to fuck Nas.
Right.
In either way, sexually or money wise. No, he denies it, and I believe him. He had a golden gem on his hand, and I think he just really wanted to see Nas. He realized how good he was, and he was like, dude, I just want to see this kid blow up. And Search at that point had loved, he loved hip hop so much. Why not let somebody who's younger than you come up and do some damage? I would do the same thing. But I remember Third Base was a dope group because they incorporated, like a lot of hip hop groups back then. They incorporated dance moves with hip hop. And MC Search was a big boy. He still is. He was, when they started, MC Search was probably about 18 or 19 years old. He was a big young kid. And that big white boy could move. If you go back and YouTube old Third Base videos, MC Search was killing it. And there's a funny story. I'll throw this one out real quick. What started the whole MC Hammer, and so they were beefing with MC Hammer, Third Base. They dissed him in a song. They didn't really diss him. It was more of a reference, but MC Hammer was like real serious about shit back then because he was labeled the pop rapper. And he was basically telling them, listen, I might be dancing in hammer pants and them, but I'll fuck you niggas up. and fewer words. That's about as urban as I can get with that. He was literally telling people, I don't give a fuck about no dance moves. I'm from Oakland. I'll fuck your shit up. So they made a reference about Hammer. He took offense to it. But what started it before then, harping on the fact that MC Search was a dancer, MC Search used to just battle fools. He used to call people out. Because back then, even though hip-hop was all about lyrics, it was about who was the best dancer, too. I remember that because I used to do the Running Man and all that stuff during that time too as a little kid. So I guess they had a show in Oakland, or they made it to Oakland somehow, or they were in the Bay Area and at a show or at some event, a hip hop event, they ran into MC Hammer. And MC Search, being young and kind of stupid and just thinking, okay, it's all about competition, I guess he approaches MC Hammer and without even like really introducing himself or being like, hey, I'm MC Search from Third Base, you might have heard about us. He basically, and he admits this in an interview, he basically goes up to MC Hammer and is like, yo, fool, let's battle. Let's dance battle. MC Hammer looked at him like, nigga, please, who the fuck are you? Who are you? Like, because it was his approach. It is like, who's this young white boy? Because MC Hammer was a little bit older. He was a grown man. So MC Hammer's looking at him like, who the fuck is this kid talking about let's battle dance? He's like, man, if you don't get out of here. So I guess MC Search was offended. He was like, oh, okay, well, you must be scared. So that started it, and then they made the reference on the track, and it turns out, in light of all that, because of those two experiences, apparently, and according to MC Search and Pete Nice themselves, MC Hammer actually put out a death hit on them. He basically told them, if you ever come to Oakland or California, period, you're dead. And I won't get into it now, but all our viewers, just Google MC Search, talks about MC Hammer, and there's a whole interview he does, not on Sway. He's not on Sway. Is it Sway? It might be Sway.
I think it was Sway.
He does it, but he tells the story in a few different places. One of them was Sway. And then he tells it, I think he tells it to
maybe
Vlad.
Hot 97 or something.
Could have been, yeah.
Or Vlad. You're right. I've heard it in different places.
He's heard it. He's told that story at least 3 or 4 different places. And he goes into detail about the course of that day where they thought they were going to get killed by MC Hammer's gangsta ass. The 357 girls were going to kill. We're going to kill MC Search, and Pete Nice. So
yeah, they had to get like gang protection, and it was in a time before like cell phones really or internet, so you could send an email. It was like, once the word went out, it was like a carrier pigeon almost. And it's like, all right, like once I said it's out, you can't really pull it back.
Exactly. It's a very interesting story, and you guys Google it, check it out, and tell us what you think.
Yeah, no, I do love that story, especially. I won't spoil it, but how it gets at the ending is a twist that is mwah. It is. I love it. The ending is a twist that would make M. Night Shyamalan proud. Unreal. It involves a titan of the music industry, and a legend. All right. So with that being said, my co-host Vince, let's move on to our next segment. We're now getting to the wrestling.
Hold on. If we're doing that, I mean, I got to give it a proper intro. I mean, you can't just finesse your way into that. It don't work that way.
Well, I tried.
We're wrestling marks, so we gotta give people the proper theme and intro. So with that being said, and hopefully you guys can hear it if it's loud enough, let's start with this. I don't know if you can hear it. It's the wrestling segment with Vince and Laren. Sometimes they call me Mad Star. This is the 1, 2, 3 kid theme. His real name is Sean Waltman. We had a sex tape with China. Oh, rest in peace, China. All right. Yay! Woo!
Well, thank you for bringing up that.
I couldn't help it.
I
know. One night in China, baby.
No, we're not discussing that. At least not today. Hopefully ever, but definitely not today.
One may never know. All right, so what's in the news, my good friend, this
But
week?
we are actually going to be talking about sex in wrestling, but not in the good way. We're going to be talking about it
the bad kind of sex.
Really the worst way. Yeah. So there was this hashtag going around on Twitter the other day in regards to wrestling and speaking out. I believe it was, let me just double check, it was, hashtag speaking out. And it blew, the hashtag blew up this past week, and it was a bunch of people coming forward about wrestlers and how they were either sexually harassed, sexually assaulted. It was, I would say, predominantly women talking about their time either as ring rats or actually being performers within the wrestling industry,
or valets or managers.
Right. And so
ring rats. I love that term.
This looks to be sort of the wrestling equivalent of the Me Too movement, where it's just an influx. Once the hashtag goes out and a couple people speak out, everyone is feels empowered to also tell their story. So there are a lot of wrestlers who are being caught up in this, and they are already being suspended, being fired. I don't know if any charges have been brought up yet. The statute of limitations are even there, but a lot of wrestlers are being quote unquote exposed because of this. Jack Gallagher has been fired from WWE. Sammy Guevara just tweeted that when he was a little younger, that he saw Sasha Banks and thought she was so hot. And instead of just saying oh, I wanted to bang her, said I wanted to rape her, which is terrible. And apparently he had a talk with Sasha Banks.
I heard about that. He apologized to her.
I think he does feel terrible. I want to give him credit. He feels terrible. And what he said was awful. Thank God he hasn't acted on that we know of. But AEW has suspended him indefinitely without pay. All his money is going to a women's charity.
Which is sad because he's part of the whole Jericho faction. The what is it? The All Elite guys? Aren't they called?
The Inner Circle.
Excuse me, the Inner Circle. The All Elite is Cody Rhodes faction.
Yeah, and the Young Guns.
The Young Bucks. The Young Bucks. And so it's was making a joke like that, because I'm sure he really didn't want to rape her, but making a joke like that, especially in this sensitive climate, is it worth your career?
Yeah.
You were part of a big thing. That's one of the biggest things in AEW right now, the Inner Circle. And for him to make that, it was very incredibly insensitive. And
it's not fair to Sasha Banks.
She had nothing to do with that. Exactly.
She had a great performance on Raw with Bayley last night, and so she's trending. And it, most of it has nothing to do with her performance in the ring or on TV. It has to do with something she wasn't even a part of. Someone else said something about her. Joey Ryan has been fired from Impact Wrestling, and he made a statement kind of denying things, but also saying, look, I've done some terrible things that I'm not proud of. One of my favorite wrestlers in WWE and NXT, the Velveteen Dream, that has been dogged by some issues even before this hashtag started happening, and now that's starting to come to light again. A lot of underage girls are saying he was sending stuff to and kind of grooming, and it's one of those things you don't want to believe it, but at the same time you don't want to discredit these young girls. But you're God damn it, this really sucks that it happened. Not there's as fans, not you don't get to see Velveteen Dream anymore. It's this just sucks.
And in a situation like this, like you said, you want to play, not so much, you want to play kind of devil's advocate, but you want to play the gray area a lot, where it's these victims could be lying, but they cannot. They could very well be telling the truth. And neither one of us were there. We don't know the accounts. We know the accusations are very serious. I pray they're not true, but they very well might be. Another name that was brought up, Matt Riddle, apparently a young, and he's the hottest thing right now in WWE. He's their newest up and coming star, and now I don't think any action has been taken against him yet, because he just debuted on SmackDown. and he had a match with AJ Styles, which apparently was a good match. And apparently they're trying to hopefully start a program between them two. But I don't know how that's going to happen, like how that's going to free fall now because of these allegations. So to harp on some of these, I guess the Matt Riddle situation was apparently an ex-fling or an ex-girlfriend of his is the one that came out about it. And her account of the experience was, I guess her, Matt Riddle, and some of the other boys were riding together. They were doing a ride-along to a show, which is something, you guys, obviously as a mark, I know this. Vince is a mark, I know this. A lot of people don't. A ride-along is basically when the wrestlers go to the next venue with each other when they tour. So he was with, this girl, and I don't think they were together at the time, but they had a sexual thing or a thing going from what I heard about and read about online. And her account of it is basically when the other boys went to sleep in the back seat, I guess he was driving, I think he was, and she was in the passenger seat. And again, this is her account of things. She claims that Matt Riddle asked her to do I don't want to say inappropriate, because I guess in his mind he probably figured, well, we used to date, we've done this. It was a sexual request. He basically told her to go down on him, from what I understand. And she told him no. She said, I'm not doing that, right now. These guys are asleep. We're not doing that. I guess she also reminded him that we no longer have that type of relationship, so you can't request things like that from me anymore. And according to her, she said he grabbed her by the hair or the neck. I don't know. Don't quote me. He put hands on her in some manner, and basically, according to her, said, "Well, what if I take it from you, or what if I make you?"
Yeah.
And apparently, she says that out of duress and fear that he was going to wake up the guys and make a big thing about it, or out her, or slut shame her, quote unquote. She did it just to keep the air clear. And again, if that's what happened, again, that's her account. I don't know if that happened or not. I hope it didn't. But if it did happen, I mean, that's awful. You don't do that. That's not your right to do that. I don't care how familiar you are with a woman or a partner. I don't want to just narrow it down to partner, narrow it down to just women. It could be partners, any gender, any preference. If you feel you have a familiarity with a partner like that, that still does not give you the right to be inappropriate because you feel, well, we used to have sex or we used to do this. It's still consent, and it's still a form of getting the person's permission and that person being comfortable enough for even doing whatever you're requesting or suggesting. And I just hope it isn't. I'm not a big Matt Riddle fan, but it would be tough to see a rising star like he is right now fall so prematurely because of one of two things: his own goddamned foolishness, if he did do that, his own goddamn foolishness, or if these are just horrible, horrible, untrue accusations that this girl is throwing around. Apparently, this all started too. I don't know if you know this. From what one of my favorite podcasters brought up a point. I was listening to him. Apparently, this all started with a fella named David Starr, who I think that's his name. Don't.
So is he related to you, Max Starr?
No, listen. I hope not, due to the fact of the stories that I've heard about this gentleman. No, apparently he's a promoter / advocate for unionizing the wrestling business, and he himself is a wrestler. I think the name is David Starr. I have to listen. Don't quote me. All you folks watching this in the comment section, if I misquoted it, please correct me. You feel free to do it. But I believe it was a wrestler named David Starr or something of that manner, who he kind of started this, I don't want to say trend, because if these are actual stories, then hey. But he kick-started this whole thing because apparently a bunch of women have come forward and said that he has sexually assaulted them. It was inappropriate. Some of these girls being ex-girlfriends. And apparently other women were inspired by this. And from what I understand, he kickstarted this whole thing. So now you've got a bunch of wrestlers from the UK being outed, a bunch of wrestlers from America, and it is just a clusterfuck. It is a clusterfuck. And here's my real personal take on it. Listen, you have to be very careful, especially if you're a man. You have to be very careful how you advance yourself, especially to women. You can't, there's a certain aggressiveness that us as men, because we're animalistic by nature, have, that we're in a climate now you really can't have that anymore. You know, and it's okay if you're with a partner that enjoys that. If they like being manhandled, or you being aggressive, or you saying quote unquote rapey things. There's some people that are into that. I don't necessarily agree with that personally. I've never practiced that, but there's some people that are like that. There are actually some women that are into that. That's one thing. But if you're just aggressive by nature, or you're just familiar, and you use entitlement or some type of privilege to feel that you have the right to not only lay hands but to say inappropriate things to a person, especially a woman, inappropriately, you gotta take the time to think to yourself, should I be saying or doing what I'm about to do right now? Even if your intention isn't rapey or inappropriate, or in the form of sexual assault. You just have to be aware. This is a very sensitive climate, and there's some people that you don't know what they've been through, and they might take it as such. So the number one thing is, and I always tell people, especially when it comes to that, keep your fucking hands to yourself.
Mhm.
If you want to avoid this shit, keep your fucking hands to yourself, especially if it's unwarranted. Uh, I was always grew up with the term "look but don't touch." Fine, if you have wandering eyes, which could be deemed a little creepy as well, that's one thing. But keep your hands to yourself. And a lot of these men, you know, you think about the Weinsteins, you think about the Bill Cosbys, you think about all these people that have had to, you know, that have had to get outed for being inappropriate with partners over the years. It's just a sense of, when it comes to some of these cases, it's just a sense of, I feel I could do what I want to do, and I'm going to get away with it because of who I am.
Yeah.
And that's not how this works. So to wrap that up, as far as on my end, I really hope none of these accusations are true. I have to sit here. There's too many for me to sit here and say that they're not. At least half of those accusations are true. But I will say some of those are probably utter bullshit. And it could be a woman just, or a person who's after notoriety, victimizing themselves, or trying to get some type of money or success out of it, which I think is horrible, because if that is the case, you're taking a lot away from actual victims who have actually been victims of a sexual assault and rape, and you're taking that away from them. You know, this is something that's very serious to those type of people. And if you're playing games because you just want to stick it to whoever you feel you've been hurt by, you should be just as persecuted and just as charged as the person you're accusing, because that's unacceptable as well. You could really ruin a person's life by making things up like that. So for the situations that are true, shame on these men. For the ones that aren't, shame on those people claiming that this happened. You know,
Right.
That's not nothing to play with. Neither in either account. You know, and rape is sexual assault is a very serious thing, and both accounts, accusing somebody who didn't pursue something like that, and then a person who actually did pursue something like that, are both very serious situations, and we just have to you just got to be very aware of your actions.
It's
in
very
life.
interesting because I feel like it's been very much a movement. I'll say this, and then we'll have to like move on to the next wrestling portion.
Yes, sir.
A very strong believe women movement has started.
Yes.
The reason being is because if you look at the statistics in terms of all the rapes that occur, how many of them go unpunished, how many of them get reported, and then those do get reported, how many of those like go to trial, and then when they go to trial, how many of them actually get in trouble, and then when they do get in trouble, how many of them get like a Brock Turner sentence and are out like very
Some
quickly.
bullshit. Yeah.
So out of all those, like I think I forget the stats, but it was a big mess, and there are some women who and men, but there are some women who will falsify accounts, but
Or embellish. Yeah.
but those numbers are so minuscule. And then in terms of, because I used to think the same way, like, oh, well, some women probably just like want to get famous or like get some shine. And after talking to like my wife, talking to some women in my life about it, all of them have said the exact same thing. And obviously there can be some women who are wired a little differently and maybe like have some issues, but for the most part, no woman wants to be famous for that. No woman wants to have their name put out in the spotlight And because every time that happens, you're always going to get a good portion of the population dragging your name in the mud, slut shaming you, saying like, what were you wearing? What were like, oh, were you coming on to him? Like did you put him on? Stuff like that. So it's something I think that, yes, obviously the public perception is always going to do one thing, and then the criminal justice is going to handle it or not handle it. But it is a society of innocent until proven guilty. But we do have to keep in mind that a lot of these women don't speak up, period. And then when they do speak up, they're running the risk of having their lives ruined anyway.
Yeah. It's a big mess, and it's sad when it has to come to this. When reports like this even have to be made, because like I said, it's a matter of awareness. It's a matter of respect. Show some respect. If a person does not want to be advanced upon then leave them the fuck alone. It's simple, you know. For people, some of these people I'm familiar with, some of these wrestlers, listen, it kind of is the same story almost every time. It's usually somebody in a position of power abusing that.
Yeah.
I'm famous, I'm rich, I'm this, I'm that. And because of all that, I'm going to show you how rich and famous and powerful I am by basically using you as my property. So it's unacceptable. And I think if these men are guilty of these things, they need to be thrown under the jail, because that's unacceptable. And if not that, definitely that, but if not that, these guys should be completely, absolutely blackballed from the wrestling industry, period. They should not be able to step in another ring. No promoters, period, should want to work with them, amongst other things, outside of wrestling as well. They should be blackballed, outed, and shamed for doing that, because it's unacceptable. So,
true.
With that being said,
all right,
let's go on.
So that obviously was very big news in the wrestling world this past week. But the other big story was that it was basically confirmed, or at least hinted at, but everyone's running with it, is that the iconic, legendary, The Undertaker, since debuting in the WWF in 1990, as you mentioned before, at Survivor Series, has retired. He's like, we never knew when it was going to happen, but news headlines are he is retired. He said he might come back every now and then for like a one-off, but he is, after
as far as full in-ring action, he's done, he says.
That Boneyard match with AJ Styles is it. That was it. So it's strange because we've been looking at Undertaker since we were literally children, and he's like he's always been just a part of wrestling, and now we've always kind of joked like, oh, when's he going to retire? Like, it's going to happen soon, and now he's saying that he's finally going to do it, and it's going to be weird. What is your take on Undertaker's legacy, his contribution, and just his entire tenure in not just wrestling, but most specifically the WWE?
Yeah, it's when I first saw the story, I woke up and checked my, I'll wake up and obviously, like most people, I check my phone, and I immediately went on social media, and it was just plastered all over. I lost count of how many wrestling forums I follow online. I follow quite a lot of them. I subscribe to a lot of them on YouTube. I follow a lot of forums and fan pages and blogs on social media, so it was unavoidable. And I literally woke up, and it was all over social media, and I was just like, oh, boy, okay. And my first jerk reaction, and this might sound silly to people because I'm a grown-ass man, my first jerk reaction was to cry. It really was. My initial reaction was to start crying because much like yourself and much like some of the people that are going to watch this episode, he molded a lot of our childhoods, wrestling period. But since he was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, featured act, quote unquote, in the wrestling industry, you could kind of look at him like you would look at a Vince McMahon. Like, he is a proprietor. He, amongst other people, but he himself personally helped kind of raise me as far as entertainment and wrestling goes. And I remember one of the first times I saw him, it was when he had the zombie character. He was the dead man. He had the lame ass organ music. which improved. Jim Johnston, thank God, and improved that over the years. It got a lot better, and there's been so many variations of his interest music. But when it was just that high pitched organ that he would come walking out to, and I remember that. I remember I don't remember exactly where I was, but I'm pretty sure I remember the debut. I had to have been about 5 or 6 years old, but I remember the debut of The Undertaker coming out as the guest partner for the $1 Million Man at Survivor Series that year. And he came out with Brother Love. Brother Love was originally his first manager. And then they, not short thereafter, he was passed over to Paul Bearer. They created a Paul Bearer character because they needed somebody. His character was so menacing and creepy and dark and demonic and zombie-like, they didn't really want him talking. So they were like, we have to put a mouthpiece with him. So they created this ghoulish, kind of Igor character. He was that's what they modeled him after. He was like an Igor. He was like the sidekick. They had to create this ghoulish character that would be the Undertaker's mouthpiece. And then in steps, Paul Bearer, which obviously is a play on of the word of Paul Bearer, the actual occupation. And his real name, remind me Paul Bearer's real name. Rest in peace.
I don't.
I used to
rest
know
in peace, Paul Bearer. I'll look it up real quick.
I gotta look it up.
Man, I only know him as Paul Bearer.
I know his real name, and it's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think right now. But he.
William Alvin Moody. He went by Bill, but
Bill. That's
Moody.
right. He was Moody. Bill Moody. That's right. Bill Moody. Rest in peace to him, and then that was a great pairing, and the Undertaker's he's had this career that has spawned, over 30 years now at this point, to the date almost. Survivor Series would have been the exact 30-year-old mark, which is what a lot of people were hoping that was going to be his final match, was something at Survivor Series with somebody, that he could put over and then go, and then actually full on do what he did at WrestleMania, what was that, 34, with Roman, which was initially supposed to be his retirement match. And he's an addict, so he can't leave it alone, and I don't blame him. You want to go out on great terms, and that was a shitty match. And then 3 or 4 matches he had after that were shitty. The one with Goldberg was shitty. The match he had with DX and Kane, that was horrible. He had a decent match when they were the Graveyard Dogs, him and Roman at Extreme Rules last year, I think it was. Other than that, he had a string of shit matches, all the way stemming from probably the match with him and Shane. That was a pretty good match. From that match on, it was a shit show. It really was. His performance in the last Royal Rumble he was in was just, it was cringy. It was hard to look at. So it was definitely his time to go. But I have to admit, when he announced it and I saw it, and obviously, as you know, he announced it on the Last Ride documentary. The last chapter that they were doing is when he actually made the announcement. So they've been planning this. Obviously, he's been thinking about this for quite some time, because they've been filming that documentary over the course of 3 years, because it goes back as far as the Roman match, and I think even sometime before then. So they obviously were like telling Mark, his real name is Mark Calloway. He was probably telling Vince, look, when we get to this last chapter, I think it's safe that I should go ahead and say that I'm done. Let's end this documentary right. So when he made the announcement, I kind of was like, I felt like him, because I'm sure he still feels this way. I still want the Undertaker to go out with a bang. That was a very entertainingly cinematic, very entertainingly segment with him and AJ at WrestleMania. Cinematically, it was great for wrestling. It was the best he was going to get. It was well put together. It was a good storyline heading into the match. I personally don't think it's fair for the Undertaker to have to go out that way, doing a shot segmented match. A great one, but nonetheless, it was edited, it was cut, it was filterized, it was colorized, it was everything a film or a television show would get that kind of special treatment.
But if he's not capable of putting on a good match as consistently as he used to, like you were saying, like his track record from the past few, and he's getting up there. He's getting older. Like, if he's not able to do it as much, why not do that? Because that was epic. That was
Yeah.
It was a cool thing to see. And
Cinematically, it was great. It was, and I agree with you. If he feels obviously he can't top that, and if he feels that way, and if his body is telling him you can't top that, he shouldn't try to top that. But from a fan, a mark of Mark, for being a mark of Mark Calloway, I would have loved to, my favorite podcast where he pitched a great thing that could have, I would have liked to have, and keep in mind too, this pandemic hasn't helped the situation either as well, because think about it. Let's be realistic. Had there been no pandemic, him and AJ would have had a straight on, full on match at WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, no question.
Now, would it have been as good as what we saw? Maybe, maybe not. I think on AJ's part, definitely, he would have bumped around for Taker. He would have done everything to make Taker look great because he's good at doing that, just like Roman did. And Undertaker, he's rusty, but I think they would have made for a decent match.
I think AJ and Undertaker would have had a great match, like actually in front of people in a ring if the pandemic hadn't hit.
If the pandemic hadn't happened, I think they would have gotten through it. And if not Undertaker, with his beat up body, then yes, AJ would have made him look very good, no doubt. Yeah. But he, it was pitched, and one of my favorite podcasters pitched this, Solid Monster. He said it would have been good to see him have a final match at Survivor Series against somebody like AJ Styles, or he even pitched Aleister Black. Because he's the new face of evil. Maybe he puts over Aleister Black, somebody new. And we might still get that. We don't know, because Undertaker has gone on record of saying he does want to retire from in-ring action, but apparently him and Vince are still negotiating for him to make certain types of comebacks. And listen, official retirements have been done in the past before, and motherfuckers have come back. Yeah. Some of them for medical reasons, some of them because it was just like, I can't do this anymore. Edge, he retired, came back. His was more of a medical reason, obviously. Shawn Michaels, full on retired and stuck to that. Nothing with him was a medical thing. He made the conscious decision to come back and do that match with DX, which was a shitty match, but with him and Hunter and Kane and The Undertaker. So do I personally think this is it? This is it? Yeah, but there's a part of me that's like, I have a feeling right around Survivor Series they're gonna kind of go through with something, and they're gonna pull something out their hat. I don't know if it'll be a full on match. I don't know I don't know. I don't know what it'll be. But as far as we know, The Undertaker is done with as far as he's officially retired. And like I said, I grew up watching this man. I know I was the least fan of his American Badass gimmick, but I've grown to actually really appreciate that. But we've seen the zombie dead man. We've seen the gothic emo version of him. We saw the satanic kind of devil-worshipping Ministry of Darkness version of him. And then he went away. And then he came back. He was the American Badass, Dead Man Inc. And then he went back to the whole dead man gimmick, but a fresher take of it. It wasn't so zombie-like, but it was his original gimmick. It was just updated. And so that's 6, 7 incarnations of The Undertaker. That's a long career.
Yeah. Real quick, before we wrap things up, we're getting to the wrap-up point. I just wanted your take on your favorite Undertaker persona and your favorite Undertaker theme song.
Let's see. I would have to say if I were to choose my number one, he was a heel during this time, and he became champion during this time as well. One of my favorites, and I guess it was just because it was that era, and that was just, the Attitude Era will forever be the light of my life. I like this Ministry of Darkness gimmick, the satanic devil-worshipping kind of goat-sacrificing version of him. It was because it was the scariest incarnation of him out of all of them. It was the most, and to me, it was the most real, I guess, one of the realest ones. After that, I would have to say no. I mean, nothing beats the OG. The even when he came back and it was an updated version of it, but nothing beats the Dead Man, the slow walking, slow moving, undead creature of the night. So I would say those two, and then after that, American Badass and the gothic rocker kind of esque thing he had going in like 97, 98. The kind of like the Marilyn Manson. Um, favorite match? You did ask me my favorite match.
Theme song.
Oh, theme song. Okay, that's right. I really enjoyed. What was my favorite? When the organs and the Dead Man Rising original theme was updated. Probably, obviously, that one, his current one, which is an updated version of his original, which was just the organ. Now it's the same, that one, yeah, I would have to say the updated version of that original. And he's had some cool ones. I mean, that heavy metal rock version he had in version of it when he was the Gothic Taker in '98 was a good one too.
That's probably my favorite one, where it was like that real Gothic, epic sounding one, like when he was like trying to sacrifice Stephanie and Stone Cold and put him on the cross. Like that was
from '98, from '97 till about '99 when he had the Ministry of Dark gimmick. Those variations where they added rock and roll music to it were probably my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely like it. Yeah. So, listen, the man's had an incredible career, and there probably won't be another wrestler in history that will replicate that or top it.
His streak, his WrestleMania streak.
That was another thing, which sadly was prematurely ended, but still, it's great. It was great all the way until he lost it. It was amazing. It was just something that solidified the Dead Man. And if this is it, I'm going to miss him tremendously, and I'm sure you will too.
Yeah.
And I really hope. I would love for him to come do a one-off. I would love for him to come at Survivor Series, do one last match, and then do what he should have done at WrestleMania with Roman. Have that whole thing, do that again, but this time let it be it. But that's entirely up to him, and that's entirely up to Vince. But as far as we're concerned, it sounds like he's done. So
yeah, I
only
think
time will tell.
Yeah, you're gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him. I think the WWE universe is gonna miss him. Particularly one celebrity fan that I know is has a lot to say on not just Undertaker, but a lot of things on wrestling. She's a friend of the show. I don't know if do we have her on the line? Do we have her? Is she ready?
Yeah. She's coming in the. She's coming in the studio right now.
Okay,
let me go get her.
Bring her in.
Hi.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi. How you doing, Whoopi? Listen, just have a seat right here. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so. Oh, hi.
Whoopi Goldberg, a friend of the show. Welcome.
This is so great. How are you? Your name's Vince, right?
Yes. Hello, Whoopi.
Oh, God.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, this is so amazing.
We heard you wanted to talk some wrestling.
Oh, yeah, I really have. I've got so much to say. And it's funny because I grew up watching a lot of wrestling. Me and Ted Danson, we used to watch it together.
Really?
When I wasn't telling and condoning him to do blackface, which was a mistake. So yeah, you can forget that portion of my career. But oh God, we used to watch it together. It was great. Oh,
so you're probably watching like when Undertaker was like really getting his like footing in the WWE.
Look, I'll be honest with you. When he first came out and he had the pasty white face, I was a little offended.
Oh.
I was a little offended. Yeah, because why couldn't he have a Montana face? Or why couldn't Mark Calloway be a black guy?
Well, I mean, now we're sort of getting back into the whole the black face and Ted Danson. I know you were really into that at the time, but
I'm an advocate for black rights. I talk about it on The View all the time, Vince.
Right.
And I don't understand. Remember when I did that movie Burglar?
Yes.
And then I did Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Right.
I was a trendsetter. The Undertaker is a trendsetter. He really is. And I was offended at first, but my God, listen, when he took out Jimmy Snuka, when he took him out, that was incredible. Like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And there's so much that I could talk about with that, but listen, I'm so sad he's gone. And you
Yeah,
gotta be sad too, Vince.
I am. I
Oh,
mean, I
no.
feel like his time has come. It's great, and like it's a little
Oh,
bittersweet, but
oh, it's
what a hell
terrible.
of a
I
run.
know. I know. Look, I'm gonna miss the guy. I'm gonna miss him so much. I remember his first title run against Hogan. I remember when he beat, Stone Cold for the title, and they had an epic match at SummerSlam. There was just so much I love about Taker, and I'm sad. I'm
Yeah.
really sad. Can you see how sad I am? This is a sad face, Vince.
I can Whoopi,
Oh,
and like I think we can all relate to how you're feeling about this. But
on a side note, Vince, you're kind of cute.
oh, that is a side note. But thank you, thank you, Whoopi.
I look,
I'm very flattered.
I know you're a married man, but
Hmm.
you're a good-looking married man.
I appreciate it. I'm very flattered, Whoopi. Thank you.
Listen,
Coming from a
back in my color purple days, I'd have given you a go.
well, I hope not. I was a young
I,
child back then.
well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's all logistics and semantics. God. Listen, I really want to say to Mark Calloway, I'm going to miss you. And listen, I hope this isn't the last time I come on the show. This is great.
No, we'd love to
I
have
would
you
love
back.
yeah, I would love to come and mark out. A lot of people don't know. I'm a mark. I'm a huge mark. Yeah. Oh, oh God, I just love it. I really do. Oh, it's so great. And you're handsome, and I like this LAREN guy.
Oh,
This
he's
is a
great.
great show. Popcorn and booze. Yeah.
Popcorn and booze. Yes. Well, you're
Yeah.
now officially a friend of the show, Popcorn and Booze. So
Oh,
thank you
and
so much, Whoopi. Thank you so much for being here.
and thank you. And I'm gonna come back soon. And
Yes.
listen, one day I would love to have you guys on The View.
Oh,
I
that'd
don't
be.
know. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but I would love to have you guys on The View.
I mean, yeah, we're totally down whenever you can
Okay.
make that work.
Well, all right. Well, look, thanks for having me. Listen, go get Burglar in the color purple on Blu-ray right now. Those are
Okay.
classics. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just
Good
love.
plug.
And I really loved working with Spielberg. I'll tell you that story next time I come.
Oh, excellent. All right, so
Yeah,
Spielberg story next time.
yeah,
We'll have
yeah,
LAREN pencil you in.
yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks, guys. I'm gonna go. I actually got a date with Ted Danson.
Exclusive. Popcorn and Booze
Bye. Oh,
exclusive.
love
You
you.
heard it
Oh,
here.
thanks. Oh, thanks. Thank you, Whoopi. Thanks, Larry. Oh, thank you. Wow, that Whoopi, she is something else.
She really is a national treasure, much like the
She is.
Undertaker.
I love that woman. She's America's grandmother. She is certainly America's grandmother. Um, so that was Whoopi rants about wrestling.
Yes.
So get used to that segment. That's going to be a recurring thing. Apparently, too, Vince. There's going to be some appearances, I believe, from Mike Tyson.
Oh.
Soon. Just word.
Former D-Generation X member Mike Tyson.
A former, yeah, he's a mark himself. He actually DM'd me on IG and told me that that's what he wants to do. So we'll get him on the show soon.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell him no. So yeah, let's have him on.
Listen, I just don't want Mike to knock me out. No. Anything Mike wants, Mike gets. I'm telling you that.
Exactly.
All right, kids. Well, with that being said, that was our very first episode. Yay! Woo! And there's more to come. Like I said, it's a show about pop culture, wrestling, movies. We cover it all, you guys. So with that being said, I am your host with the most, the man with the plan. I go by LAREN Moore.
I'm the man with no nickname, Vince Eustace.
And you guys have just witnessed glory in all its vastness. The very first episode of Popcorn
and Booze.
All right. Yay! Hey, I want to thank you guys for coming out. Tell us what you think. Post in the comments. Send us DMs. Whatever you want to do, message us. Tell us how you think. And we will be posting you soon. All right. Till next time. See ya. Bye-bye. 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 Bye.